Welcome to Sleepy Historian, where we whisper history until you drift away. Before we begin tonight's tale, let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? What time is it for you right now? We love to see how far our sleepy ship sails. Now breathe in, breathe out, and let's begin. You can smell the sea before you see it. It rises through the alleys of Portsmouth, like a rumor, damp, briny, a little metallic, the kind of smell that clings to your tongue even after you've shut your mouth tight. You're standing on cobblestones wet with last night's ale, and today's gossip, a slip of paper in your hand that says "Far," a report to the Lady Juliana. You don't know her. Of course, not really. You only know she's a ship, a woman by name, but made of timber and tar, bound for the far side of the earth, Australia, a place whispered about by the guards like it's both punishment and possibility. Around you, women murmur. Some cry, some curse, some look like they're trying very hard not to be seen at all. There's a tightness in your chest, not fear exactly, not yet, just the heavy throb of something changing. Irreversibly, the ship waits at anchor, creaking like an old woman with secrets. She's big, bigger than you imagined. Her masts pierce the clouds like accusations. Ropes hang like spider legs, ready to pull you into some forgotten belly. You're processed, counted, recorded, not by name. Names are too soft for this kind of journey. You're now a body, a number, a cargo. And then the rope uncoils. It slides like a serpent into the water. The harbor cheers from a distance. The wind flirts with the sails, and before you can find a place to sit or even a proper place to cry, you're already leaving. No one waves goodbye. Portsmouth shrinks behind you, not dramatically, not in slow motion like the start of an epic, just like how things always leave, without your permission. You press your hand to the ship's railing. It smells of salt, sweat, and old wood. You take your first breath as a passenger of exile, or perhaps quietly, a passenger of change. The sea doesn't roar, it sighs, as if it knows this voyage will take more than just months. It will take stories and silence and layers of your old self you didn't even know could peel. The first days at sea are not like stories say. There's no weeping violin, no tragic poetry drifting above the waves, just nausea, confusion, and the low moan of timber adjusting to movement. The Lady Juliana groans like she too would rather be anywhere else. Below deck, it's dark. You blink, but the blackness doesn't lift. It's not night, it's the belly of the ship. Wooden ribs overhead curve like the insides of a whale. The air is thick with salt, vomit, sweat, and something sharp, fear, maybe, or grief still fresh. Bodies shift in silence. A cough, a prayer, the scrape of someone trying not to cry too loudly. The women are stacked, not cruelly, but closely. Hammocks sway in slow, ungraceful rhythm. Straw mats line the lower deck. Some sleep in corners, curled like cats in a storm. Others sit up, backs against barrels, fingers tracing the grain of the wood as if it were a map home. There are no guards down here, just silence and memory. Food is passed through like rations to livestock, biscuits, hard as bone, salted meat with a sheen of age. Water smells of the barrel it came in. Time stops behaving. Day and night blur. The occasional beam of sunlight through the hatch feels like a miracle. The sea rocks you, but it doesn't soothe. It's not a cradle, it's a slow, sloshing reminder that you're untethered. Someone throws up. Someone else laughs at the absurdity of it. Then we all laugh, not because it's funny, but because what else can you do? They start sharing stories bit by bit about the men they left behind, the children they never held, the petty crimes that now feel so irrelevant. One woman was jailed for stealing a ribbon, another for speaking back to a magistrate. Another says nothing, but the bruises on her neck say enough. You learn quickly that the crime doesn't matter. Not anymore. You're here. You're all here. For months, floating, sweating, forgetting what silence without fear sounds like. And yet, underneath the grime and hunger, something flickers, a kind of stubbornness, a pulse of will. These are not women who will shatter easily. The ship moves forward, and somehow so do you. It starts with a whistle, not the sharp human kind, but the wind's. One morning, the sails above groan, with a noise that sends shivers through the deck like a warning. The Lady Juliana, never a sleek vessel to begin with, begins to tilt and moan with more urgency. The sky turns pewter. The sea grows teeth. The prisoners feel it first in their sleep. Hammocks lurch like pendulums possessed. Buckets slosh over. Someone's cough becomes a scream. Above, boots clatter. Sailors yell. Orders none of the women understand. Below, panic begins to bloom like mold in the dark. Rain comes sideways. The ship doesn't slice the sea anymore. It's being chased, bullied by it. The Lady Juliana bucks like she wants to shake everyone off. Some women cry out for God, others for mothers long buried. A few grip their hammocks like lifelines, and one simply prays to make it to tomorrow without vomiting on her own feet. Salt water begins to find its way into everything. The blankets, the bread, the prayers, and then a crack, not wood, but bone. A woman falls from her hammock. Blood, sudden and bright, stains the old timber. There's no doctor. There's no clean cloth. Just shaking hands and whispered curses. The storm doesn't apologize. A barrel breaks loose. The deck floods. Rats emerge from crevices, soaked and frantic. They don't care who screams. They're just trying to survive too. One prisoner, the one with the ribbon story, begins to sing. A soft lullaby. Off-key, almost silly, but it spreads. Others hum along, not to drown the storm, but to outlast it. The ship rides the waves like a dying creature, refusing to roll belly up, and somehow so do they. After the storm, a silence takes root, not peace, just absence, the kind that settles into bones and makes everything feel heavier, the kind that turns hours into whole lifetimes. No more singing, no more screaming, just a ship full of women and a sea that refuses to change its expression. The Lady Juliana resumes her crawl across the ocean, not with any pride or grace, but like a mule pulling a cart of ghosts. Time on the ship begins to dissolve into sameness. Wake, eat, sit, sleep, wake again. The food never changes. The biscuits don't get softer. The salted meat doesn't taste less like rot. The water always smells of old wood and tin. They begin to invent things to care about. A seagull spotted far off becomes a prophecy. A creaking beam sparks debate. Is it loose? Will it fall? How dangerous is it really? Women take turns telling the same stories, each with slightly different endings. One woman starts pretending to read tea leaves from the dregs of her tin cup. You find yourself obsessed with the shape of shadows. You memorize knots in the timber. You trace old graffiti carved by previous prisoners. A name, half erased, E. Bradshaw, 1787. You wonder who she was, where she sat, whether she made it. Sometimes someone weeps quietly. No one asks why. No one offers comfort. Not because they're cruel, but because they're exhausted. It takes more energy to care than they can spare. The worst part isn't the hunger. It isn't even the smell, which now clings to everyone like a second skin. It's the endlessness. The sense that the ship exists outside of time. That Australia isn't real. That land, trees, color, these are things invented by liars. Then one day a book appears. It's not clear where it came from. Maybe a sailor dropped it. Maybe a prisoner smuggled it on board. It's missing its cover and the first few pages. But it's something. It has words, real words. They read it aloud, line by line. A voice breaks the silence. Then another. They take turns. No one cares what the book is about. They just want syllables, rhythms, sentences that don't belong to this prison of wood and salt. Some of the women begin to write their own stories, scratched into slivers of wood, muttered under breath. sewn into dreams. In a place where nothing happens, imagination becomes rebellion. You close your eyes one night and dream, not of escape or even freedom, but of rain on a window, the sound of shoes on a dry road, the weight of a clean pillow, and that's enough. For now. There are no clocks aboard the Lady Juliana. Oh, the sailors keep their watches, their bells, their sense of schedule. But for the women below deck, there is no time, only light and dark, hunger and sleep, sweat and shiver. The ship's belly is a place of echoes. It catches every sound, every cough, every scrape, every whispered curse, and folds them into the walls. You begin to recognize voices by how they ricochet. There's the girl with the wheezy laugh, the woman who mutters in her sleep, the one who prays too loud, too often. The floor is damp, always. Your clothes rot in slow motion. Even your skin starts to feel less like yours, more like the ship's. Space becomes political. Where you sleep, where you squat, where you can lean for 5 minutes without being told to move, it all matters. Alliances form, silences become currency. One woman trades a ribbon for a dry spot near a vent. Another gives away her stories for half a biscuit. And there's always the creak. It becomes a companion, a signature, the voice of the lady herself. She groans with the waves, sighs when the sails shift. Sometimes she growls. You learn to read her moods. Then there are the visits. They come at night, boots on the stairs. The sound makes everyone still. You don't need to be told. You don't ask who's next. The silence is the agreement. Don't talk about it. Don't name it. Naming makes things real. You hear the boots stop beside someone. A pause, a muffled sob, then footsteps climbing away again. In the morning someone has a bruise, or doesn't get up, or speaks too sweetly, like she's trying to prove something to herself, and still the sea rolls on. A rat dies in the corner. No one moves it. No one has the energy. It becomes a fixture, like the barrel with the cracked lid, or the post that always leaks. A tooth falls from your mouth one night. Just falls out. You put it in your pocket, for no reason. Just because it's the only part of you that's escaped. Someone laughs at nothing. The laugh echoes so strangely. Others join in. For a few moments it sounds like joy, or madness, or both. A girl sings a lullaby no one recognizes. She sings it every night for a week, then stops. No one asks why. A woman whispers to the boards, "I used to keep bees." That's all. But it sticks. That night, you dream of bees, of fields, of summer so hot the air hums. When you wake, you realize your dreams are the only place where time moves, and that might be the only reason you keep sleeping. Somewhere between the 4th and 5th week at sea, the Lady Juliana stopped being a ship and became a small floating world. The ocean had erased all evidence of England. The stars above were foreign constellations, and the horizon no longer promised return, only endurance. Time softened into something sloshy and indistinct. Days were marked not by calendars, but by stomach growls, water rations, or the occasional gull sighting that sent a wave of pointless excitement through the deck. The sun became your reluctant clock. It rose, it fell, and somewhere between the two you existed. Below deck, the air had thickened with humanity, not just the stench of sweat or the tang of iron from old blood, though those were constant companions, but the invisible buildup of withheld words, of inner storms no ocean could dilute. Every woman had secrets, and the Lady Juliana, perhaps more than any ship afloat, had become a vessel not only of bodies but of untold stories. It started with whispers. You weren't even sure who began it, maybe one of the Welsh girls or a mother from Shoreditch whose child had died at birth and who now carried grief like a second pair of lungs. Someone, one night, shared a memory, not aloud, not to the group, but in that semi-darkness between candle snuffings and sleep. One voice, brittle as dry paper, recounting a lost Sunday morning, and then silence. And then another voice, from another hammock, said, "I remember something like that." Suddenly, stories were being traded like contraband, not just the tragic ones. Oh no, those were expected. But it was the tiny, unexpected ones that cut deepest, the way someone's mother used to fry onions on market day, or how a lover once touched their wrist before saying goodbye. Useless stories, but necessary. It didn't take long for someone to suggest writing them down. Now this was a challenge. Most aboard were illiterate. Pencils were rarer than mercy. Paper, an unimaginable luxury. But somehow, against reason, they made it work. Scraps were scavenged from the ship's medical stores, margins of shipping manifests, even the backs of old maps. Ink was borrowed or stolen, or created from soot and spit and salt. A system emerged. The few women who could write did so for those who couldn't. One of the midshipmen, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of boredom, offered extra ink in exchange for gossip or songs. A barter economy of memory bloomed. The past was finally worth something again. You watched as a girl named Ellie dictated a letter to her sister. She spoke slowly, like each word might bite. The girl writing it, a former maid with surprisingly elegant script, nodded with the patience of a priest. When they finished, they folded the paper like a prayer. No one asked where it would go. It didn't matter. These weren't real letters. They were rehearsals, acts of remembering, and by extension, resistance. You wrote one too. You didn't mean to. You weren't even sure what you were trying to say. But you found yourself tracing a story about a yellow ribbon you used to wear when your hair was longer. About a window you liked to sit by when it rained. It felt foolish, but when you finished, your chest ached a little less. By week's end, the ship had its own kind of library. Dozens of pages tucked in seams of dresses, inside bedrolls, under the straw of rat-infested hammocks. If the ship had sunk that night, archaeologists might have found something far more valuable than bones. They'd have found proof that forgotten women once remembered themselves. And sometimes, that's enough. There are 3 things every woman aboard the Lady Juliana feared equally: hunger, infection, and the ship's doctor. Dr. Collinson was a man of contradiction. Sharp with his scalpel, but dull with empathy. His breath always smelled faintly of cloves, which would have been pleasant if not for the way he looked at you, as though diagnosing you for parts rather than pain. He wore his hair in a tight pigtail, powdered when the wind allowed it, and he kept a journal that no one ever saw but everyone whispered about. Some said he was once a Navy surgeon. Others said he had once been tried for malpractice and saved himself by volunteering for this voyage. Regardless, he was not to be trusted. When women fell ill, which was often due to spoiled meat, unfiltered water, or simply despair, they were summoned to the doctor's quarters, a room that smelled like vinegar, piss, and ink. Some came back with bandages. Others didn't come back at all. The rumors filled the hammocks faster than the fleas. You tried to stay invisible. Drank only what you had to. Ate slowly, chewing until your jaw ached just to convince your body you'd had enough. But even the strongest among you had their breaking point. One woman, Mary H., was brought to him after a coughing fit that rattled her like a kettle. She returned days later, pale and thinner, but strangely bright-eyed. She claimed he gave her the good tonic and told her she'd be just fine. By nightfall, she was dead. The doctor blamed it on an interior fever. But fever doesn't explain the bruises on her throat. Still, what could you do? Complain? To whom? Instead, the women began their own medical rituals: herbal poultices made from dried weeds smuggled in hems, salt gargles, crushed charcoal for stomach aches. You took turns watching each other sleep, checking for too shallow breaths or shaking hands. You became your own nurses, midwives, priests. And then there were the rats. They came in the 4th month, as if summoned by the despair. They were not shy. You would wake to the sound of gnawing, or the sudden sharp bite of a tail against your arm. One girl, barely 15, lost a fingertip in the night. After that, Some began tying strips of cloth around their hands and feet before sleep, a kind of makeshift armor. The doctor said the rats kept the ship clean. They eat what you won't, he explained, as if that were comforting. Someone suggested letting the cat loose. Someone else said the cat had been eaten weeks ago, though no one could confirm. But despite it all, the doctor, the rats, the fevers, there were nights when you could forget. When the stars emerged in clusters, the sky clear and deep as a cathedral, someone on deck would hum a tune. Another might describe a constellation they used to know by name. For a moment you would lift your head and feel something that wasn't fear. It wasn't hope either. Just the brief luxurious absence of despair. You lay on your back, pressed against warm wood, eyes scanning the skies above. What did stars mean to convicts? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. They didn't bring rescue, but they reminded you that the world was enormous, that land existed beyond this splintered deck, that you were still capable of wonder, even if you were sick, even if you were forgotten, even if you were just one of many names that never made it onto a proper list. You looked up. You didn't wish. You simply remembered what looking up felt like. You waked to a heavy stillness. The deck beneath your back groans softly as the swell rises and falls, no longer the wild crests of the open ocean, but a gentler, more rhythmic lull. Around you the others are stirring, blinking against the gray light that seeps through the cracks in the hull. Someone whispers, "Land." You pull yourself up, press your face to a knot in the timber, and there it is, a jagged silhouette on the horizon, wrapped in mist and promise. Van Diemen's Land. The end of the world, and the beginning of something else entirely. The preparations begin in hushed efficiency. The crew seems subdued, whether out of superstition or fatigue you can't tell. The women are allowed on deck in turns to see this strange new land with their own eyes. When it's your turn, you clutch the railing and stare. There's no city here, no cheering crowd, just a craggy coastline lined with dense eucalyptus forests and hills that roll like frozen waves. A gull screams overhead, and the wind carries the scent of wet leaves and something faintly smoky. It doesn't feel like arrival. It feels like exile. Below deck, the mood curdles. Some women cry. Some kneel in silent prayer. Others tie ribbons in their hair or smear soot on their cheeks to give themselves a wild, untamed look. One girl, her name you never knew, laughs as she carves a notch in the wood beside her bunk, one for every day at sea. There are 123. You trace your fingers over your own tally, hidden under your blanket. Yours are smaller, neater, almost shy. You wonder if you'll still be making marks like this in a year or 10. When the ship finally docks, there's no ceremony. A handful of soldiers wait on the pier. One yawns, another picks his teeth with a nail. They don't look like the monsters your nightmares painted, but they don't look kind either. One by one you're ushered off the ship. Your feet hit the pier and it feels like the world tilts. The wood is solid but unfamiliar. You'd grown used to the sway of the sea. Now everything is still, but your body keeps shifting, unsure of this quiet ground. You are handed a sack with your name stitched in clumsy thread. It holds a worn dress, shoes that don't fit, and a small bar of soap. Welcome to your new life. The road to the camp is long. You sit on a cart with 3 other women. One of them is singing softly, some London tune you haven't heard in years. The horses clop through rutted earth, and the forest looms on either side, dense and full of unseen creatures. You swear you spot a kangaroo bounding away, but no one believes you. When the camp finally comes into view, it's more like a prison than anything else. Timber buildings with barred windows, a high fence, guards, always guards. But inside, it's women. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Some wearing bonnets, others barefoot. All of them with eyes like yours, watchful, tired, hungry. Not for food, for something they haven't found yet. You're led to a dormitory. It smells of sweat, lie and something sour you can't place. The woman in charge is a matron with arms like stovepipes and a voice that could sand wood. She assigns you a bed, points to a bucket, and tells you not to cause trouble. You nod. Later that night, a girl in the next bed offers you a bit of sugar wrapped in a twist of cloth. Stole it from the kitchen, she says with a wink. We don't get much, but when we do, you press the grainy sweetness to your tongue and let it dissolve. It tastes like warmth, like the memory of something kinder. You say thank you. She says, you'll owe me. The days settle into rhythm. Morning chores, midday prayer, sewing, cooking, laundry, night. Always night. Sometimes a man comes. Sometimes they take a girl aside. Sometimes she returns. Sometimes she doesn't. No one talks about it. Not really. One woman leaves a note pinned to her pillow before she vanishes. Better gone than broken. It's gone before breakfast. But you remember the words. You say them under your breath when the dark feels too close. And then something shifts. You're selected for a labor detail. Something outside the camp. Trees, soil, tools heavier than your hands can hold. It feels good. Strange, but good. To sweat under the open sky. To ache for a reason. You meet a boy who works with the horses. He has sandy hair and 2 big boots. He speaks to you like you're a person, not a sentence. His name is Thomas. One day he brings you a crust of bread still warm from his pocket. Another day, a comb, then a letter. You open it with trembling hands. It's not love, not yet, but it's kind, and honest, and full of little details, about a kookaburra he saw, about how your face looked when you laughed the day your bonnet flew off. You read it twice, then again. You don't know what to write back. You've forgotten how, but you begin, slowly, carefully, as if building a bridge with splinters. You tuck the letter under your mattress and wonder if this is what survival feels like. Not just breathing, but reaching. Not just staying alive, but beginning to live. And for the first time since stepping onto that ship, you don't count the days behind you. You count the ones ahead. You wait until the others are asleep. The dormitory is a chorus of soft snores, creaking wood and the occasional whisper of restless feet brushing against straw mattresses. You lie still, eyes open to the darkness, your hand resting under your pillow where the folded paper hides. You've read it so many times the edges are frayed. Still, you read it again, if only in your mind. There's a bird here that laughs at me every morning. I swear it waits for me to trip over the bucket before it calls out, like it knows. You smile before you can stop yourself. By morning you've written something back. You don't say much, just a few lines, careful not to sound too eager, too hopeful. You mention the smell of the laundry soap, the scrape of your hands after peeling potatoes, and how strange it feels to be looked at without judgment. You tuck the note into a folded scrap of linen and slip it into the empty bread sack near the kitchens, just like he told you. Later that day, you find a blue button tied to a string hanging near the stable gate. His sign. He got it. You start writing more. Every 2 or 3 days, a new note. Tiny pieces of yourself sealed in words. You tell him about the woman who sings in her sleep, about the small pink flower blooming through a crack in the fence, about how sometimes when the wind hits the trees just right, it sounds like the sea again. He writes too. Tells you about the old mare who hates thunder, about how the eucalyptus bark peels off like paper in the heat, about a dream he had of building something with walls and a chimney and windows that didn't need bars. You read that part twice, then 3 times. The others start to notice. Not the letters, but the way you walk a little lighter, the way your eyes search the tree line at dusk, the way you hum when no one's watching. They don't ask. But one night, the sugar girl, the one who gave you that first stolen sweetness, leans close and says, "Careful with the dreams, love. They don't last long here." You don't answer, because part of you knows she's right, and part of you desperately hopes she's wrong. One afternoon, while hauling water from the creek, a guard catches your eye, not the usual ones. This one is new, young, pale and sharp, like a blade still cooling. He doesn't smile. You pretend not to notice. But he watches. For days. You begin to take longer routes to the drop point. Wait until the shadows are longer. Make sure no one's following. The letters become shorter, coded, just in case. He doesn't stop writing. Neither do you. Then one day the bread sack is gone. Not torn, not moved. Gone. You wait an extra hour. Then 2. You go back the next morning, pretending to drop scraps. Nothing. The button by the stable gate is missing too. Your heart beats too loud in your chest. You scrub harder at the laundry, but the suds blur your vision. You don't sleep that night. 2 days pass. On the 3rd, a folded paper is slipped under your blanket during morning roll call. No name, no mark, just his handwriting. Had to stop. Eyes on me, be safe. I'll find another way. You clutch it to your chest, then hide it quickly. You try to look normal, like nothing's changed. Like your world hasn't just cracked open and spilled something irreplaceable. You whisper his name once, just to hear it. Then you whisper your own, so you don't forget who you are. The waiting becomes your new rhythm. You leave small signs where you can. A line of pebbles, a sprig of green tucked under the trough, a bent nail pushed into the gate post. Messages without words, sometimes they disappear, sometimes not. You never know if it's him or someone else, but you keep doing it. Because hope, it turns out, is stubborn and quiet and shaped exactly like a button on a string. Weeks pass. Work continues. The forest grows darker in summer. The days stretch out, thick and buzzing with insects. The laundry smells stronger. The food gets thinner. The matron's temper, shorter. But still no letters, no notes, no button. Until one night you find a sliver of paper tucked into your shift, just before lights out. No envelope, no fancy words, just 3 lines. Built the first wall today. You'd like the view. The kookaburra still mocks me. I think he misses you. You don't cry. Not really. But the pillow is damp by morning. The next day you're caught staring out past the fence. Not long, just a moment. But it's enough. The sharp-faced guard steps close, too close. His eyes narrow. Something out there. You shake your head, just thinking. He leans in, voice low and slow. Thinking gets girls in trouble. You nod, not too quickly, and you don't look out again. Not while he's watching. But later, when the dusk bleeds purple through the clouds, you close your eyes and picture the view from that wall. You see trees, and light, and him, waiting. They assign you to the kitchen. It's a promotion, technically. Fewer hours under the sun, less back-breaking weight, more trust. But trust here is a cage with velvet bars. The matron hands you a list each morning. Inventory, beans, flour, salt, always too little salt. You stir porridge in pots as wide as bathtubs. You watch steam curl like ghosts. You scrub metal bowls until your knuckles crack. But you have a window now, small, high, barred. And from that window, you can see the slope behind the camp. And sometimes, just sometimes, you think you see movement. A shape between the trees. You begin to smuggle scraps, not letters, not yet. A curl of carrot peel left by the back door, a flat stone with an arrow scratched into it, tucked behind the firewood, a single eucalyptus leaf, pressed into a jar lid. It's not much, but it's language. One morning, a message appears, burned carefully into a plank behind the smokehouse, near the ground where only a crouch could spot it. 3 symbols. You don't know what they mean at first, but that night it rains, and in the puddle behind the stables you find it. A note, wrapped in waxed cloth, weighted with a pebble, buried just deep enough to hide from careless boots. There's a garden now, small, wild, started with a broken fence post and a bit of stolen seed. Things grow here. Things live. You read it slowly. He doesn't say your name, but he doesn't have to. He talks about the color of the soil, how it stains his fingernails like ink. He tells you how the wall is nearly waist high, and how he's training the dog to bark only when strangers come near. He doesn't ask if you'll come, but he describes the path, and he says it twice. You're careful, so careful. You don't respond directly. Instead, you hum tunes when the kitchen is empty. You leave pebbles in groups of 2 near the bread bin. You scratch marks behind the spice jars, dots and slashes, faint as a whisper. One morning, you find a fig in your apron pocket, fresh, still warm from a hand. You hide it until evening, then eat it slowly, seed by seed. It tastes like risk, and longing, and summer. Rumors begin to slither through the dorms. A girl's gone missing, not escaped, just relocated. No one says where. Another has bruises she won't explain. The sharp-faced guard starts pacing more, speaking less. The matron snaps at shadows. You keep your head down. You become invisible. A shadow stirring soup, a quiet face behind steam, a pair of hands that never shake, but your mind burns. Night after night, you replay the path in your head. That slope, the trees, the rock shaped like a ship, and the words he wrote. Things grow here. Then one evening, the sugar girl corners you. Her hair's shorter now, her voice lower. There's something in her eyes, harder but not unkind. She says, I know what you're doing. You don't deny it. You just wait. She leans close. They'll catch you. They always do. Then she presses something into your palm. A twist of cloth. You open it later. 3 matches, and a drawing. Crude, but unmistakable. A wall, a gate, and a tree in bloom. You can't sleep. You lie in bed, counting breaths instead of days. You imagine the dog, the garden, the sound of a shovel cutting into earth that hasn't been punished yet. You imagine what it might feel like to speak out loud without looking over your shoulder. And then you make a decision. You don't tell anyone. You don't pack. You just wait. The next morning, you fake a fall near the ash bins. It's enough. They assign you to burn duty, carting waste out beyond the fence, near the tree line, alone, exactly once a week, exactly 1 hour. That's all you'll get. You check the matches in your pocket 3 times. You don't plan to light anything, unless you have to. When the hour comes, your hands don't shake. You walk slowly, steadily, cart rattling, boots silent on the mud. You don't look back. You don't run. You reach the edge, and there it is, just as he described. The rock, the slope, the crooked tree. You breathe in. The forest smells like rain and rot and eucalyptus and hope. You take 1 step forward, then another. Then the world holds its breath. You expected silence. But the forest is full of sound. Leaves rustle like skirts in motion. A cicada buzz rises and falls in the canopy. Somewhere nearby, a kookaburra lets out a shriek of laughter, sharp, sudden, as if mocking your every footstep. But you don't stop. Your boots sink slightly into moss. Twigs snap under your weight. The path is not a path, not really, just a line of trampled ferns and bent grass that only someone looking would see. And you are very much looking. Every step away from the fence feels like peeling off a layer of skin. The fear is real, coiled in your spine. You imagine the matron's shout, the guard's boots pounding behind you, the lash of punishment curling through the air. But it doesn't come. Not yet. Not this time. You reach the creek, cross barefoot, the water cold and fast biting at your ankles. On the other side, a clearing, and in the middle of it, the wall, just like he wrote. It's nothing grand, not even shoulder height, rough stones stacked with care, uneven but solid. A gate made of scrap wood and rope swings gently in the wind. There are tools lying nearby, a spade, A tin watering can, a rusted pail, a sock drying on a branch, and then behind the wall movement. You freeze. Your breath hitches. And then, he steps into view. He looks older, not by years but by weight. Sunburn along the nose, a new scar at the temple, hands calloused like tree bark, but the eyes, those are the same. His mouth opens but he doesn't speak at first, just walks toward you slowly, as if afraid you'll vanish if he blinks. Then finally, softly, you made it. You nod. You kept your promise. He smiles, crooked, tired, real. The garden is small but alive. Beans on a trellis, wild herbs curling in the corners, a crooked row of cabbages, marigolds pushing through cracks like little suns. You sit beside the wall, mud still on your skirt, and take it all in. He offers you water from a clay cup, then bread, dense and coarse but warm. You eat in silence. He doesn't ask questions. You don't offer stories. Not yet. For now, being here is enough. Eventually you speak, only small things. That the sugar girl helped. That the sack is gone. That the guard with the knife eyes watches everything now. He nods. Says, I heard about a girl getting taken to Ross. That wasn't you. You shake your head. Not this time. A long pause. Then don't let there be a next time. You say nothing. Because you don't know what time means anymore. The sun begins to drop. You should go. If you don't return before the hour's up, they'll count heads, ask questions, maybe start looking. But your feet won't move. Not yet. He seems to understand. He points to the tree at the edge of the clearing, crooked, old, covered in bark that peels like paper. There, he says. Behind it, a hollow. I leave things there. From now on, you nod. Same place every time. You press your fingers to your chest. Me too. He walks with you to the creek but doesn't cross. Says it would draw too much attention. Says it's safer this way. Says many things that don't need saying. Then I don't dream much anymore. You tilt your head. He shrugs. Didn't think I had the right to. Not here. You step closer. Do you now? He doesn't answer with words, just takes your hand and squeezes once. Firm. Then lets go. The walk back is shorter, or maybe it just feels that way. Your limbs move on instinct, your thoughts somewhere else entirely. You return the cart, brush your boots, step back into the dorm like nothing happened. No one notices, but the sugar girl slips a glance your way and nods once. You nod back. That night you sleep like you haven't in years, and when you dream of dirt under your nails, sun on your face, and a gate that never locks. The next morning, you wake before the others. The dormitory is still, caught in that fragile moment between night's final sigh and the rattle of dawn's first orders. You dress in silence, fingers nimble from routine. Your apron is already folded, your boots already laced. You check the matchsticks in your hem. Still there, still dry, just in case. Back in the kitchen, the water boils, the matron grumbles, the porridge burns. Everything is as it should be, but your eyes keep drifting to the window, the slope, the tree line, the memory of his hand in yours. You tell yourself not today. You tell yourself once a week is enough. You tell yourself a lot of things. By midday, the guard with the blade face comes sniffing around the scullery. He doesn't speak, just stands too close, breathing through his mouth, letting his eyes crawl over your face like spiders. You don't flinch. You don't blink. You become the pot, the floor, the wall. He eventually walks away, but something cold lingers in the air where he stood, something that smells like warnings. That night, you find a stone near your bunk, a small one, smooth, painted with a single black line down the middle. Not a message, a threat. You stare at it a long time before slipping it under your mattress. The next cart duty is quiet. Too quiet. You expect birdsong, but hear none. You expect the wind, but the trees barely move. You expect him, but the garden is empty. The sock on the branch is gone. The pail is tipped. The gate hangs open. You crouch at the tree, fingers trembling, and find nothing in the hollow. No letter, no mark, no sign, just silence. You wait an hour past your time. It's stupid, dangerous, but you don't care. When you finally return, your apron muddy, your boots soaked, the matron slaps you across the face hard enough to rattle your teeth. "Don't test me," she hisses. You nod, because that's what's expected. But inside something cracks. Days pass. No message, no note, no fig, no button. You start to sleep less, eat less. Your hands shake when you stir the soup, and the sugar girl takes the ladle from you without asking. "You're no good to anyone broken," she mutters. You almost ask, "Then who will care for me?" But you don't, because you already know the answer. Then finally a sign. It comes not in a letter, but in smoke, thin and gray, rising behind the far ridge. You see it from the laundry yard, a soft curl against the blue sky, almost gentle, but it means something. You're sure of it. That night, you return to the dormitory and scratch a symbol into the underside of your bunk slat. A sun, a bird, a wave. It's not much, but it's hope. 2 days later, the sugar girl slips a folded note into your apron. She doesn't say where it came from. You don't ask. It reads, "Hiding. They came, took the dog, burned the garden. But I'm still breathing. I remember the path." You press the paper to your lips, close your eyes, and swear under your breath. Not a curse, a promise. The guard increases his patrol. His boots echo louder. He looks at the girls like locks look at keys, like meat looks at knives. And every time you walk the slope, push the cart or dump the ash, you feel his eyes like a rope tightening around your neck. But you keep going, because now the hollow has become something more than a hiding place. It's a heartbeat, and you will not let it stop. That night, a new girl arrives. Young, pale, eyes too wide, too empty. She doesn't speak. She just curls on the straw, fists clenched, as if she's still holding something from the ship that no one else can see. You offer her bread. She doesn't take it. You leave it anyway. Later it's gone, and the next day she stands beside you in the laundry line and says quietly, "Don't stop walking." Just that. Then nothing more. You don't sleep that night. You count seconds instead of stars. You write a letter in your mind. We'll rebuild. Not the wall, not the garden. Something else. Something no one can burn. I'll find you. And in the morning you walk to the hollow and leave nothing. But the letter inside your chest feels real enough. And when the kookaburra laughs, you laugh too. You forget the sound of your own voice. Not completely, but enough. Enough that when you speak aloud, just once, to the tree by the creek, the words scrape your throat like dry bread. "I'm still here." The tree doesn't answer, but the wind picks up, just slightly, and for a moment you pretend it heard. The garden is gone. Not just overgrown. Gone, torn earth, charred roots, stones scattered like bones, the gate in splinters. Even the marigolds, trampled, blackened, buried under ash. You kneel in the ruins and sift through the soil with bare hands, hoping for something. A seed, a sign, a button. But there is nothing. Only silence and the stink of something that once lived. When you return to camp, something has shifted. The sharp-faced guard isn't just watching anymore. He's circling, sniffing, waiting. You hear your name called during roll, but it's not your name. Not really. It's the number stitched into your collar. You answer anyway, because that's what the system requires. But it carves something from you every time. That night, the sugar girl comes to your bunk. She doesn't speak at first, just sits. You pretend to be asleep, but she knows you're not. "You have to stop," she says. Still soft, but final. You open your eyes. She doesn't look angry, just tired. They're closing in. Another girl disappeared last week. No noise. Just gone. You sit up. Who? She shrugs. Doesn't matter. It wasn't you. That's what does. You almost say, but it could be. But instead you say nothing. Because she's right. And she's wrong. And both truths sit in your mouth like stones. The next morning the matron pulls you aside. Her breath smells like vinegar and power. She says your stitches are too loose. Your hands too slow. Your eyes too proud. She says this is your final warning. But you've lost count of how many finals you've been given. You nod. Apologize. And then later that day you slip another letter behind the firewood. You write it on old flower paper, smuggled from the stores. You don't sign it. But the words are yours. I will not be forgotten. Even if they burn the world around me, I am still someone. And then the raid. It happens in the middle of night. Boots, torches, screams, men shouting, dogs barking, women shoved from beds lined against the wall like guilty statues. They search everything. Your bunk, your boots, even your mouth. One girl is dragged out, then another. The third fights. They make her stop. You watch it all without blinking. Because blinking means weakness. And weakness is an invitation. They find nothing in your bunk. No note. No match. No buttons. But the sharp-faced guard doesn't look disappointed. He just stares at you longer than the others. Then softly, too softly, we'll get there. Then he walks on, and your knees almost give out. But they don't. Because your knees belong to you. The next day there's no breakfast. No fire. Just silence. A collective punishment. You chew dry air. And count the cuts on your fingers. 7. The same as yesterday. But the ache feels different. Like a storm that refuses to arrive. And then a miracle. Or something close. Tucked into the crack of the laundry tub. A letter. Short. Rushed. But his handwriting. Didn't run. They chased. Hid in the mine shaft. 3 days. No light. Alive. When the moon is high, follow the hollow. I'll be waiting. You read it twice. Then 3 times. You mouth the words I'll be waiting. And you know you'll go. That night you prepare. No note. No goodbye. Just matches. Just breath. Just your name. The real one. The one no one here uses. The one you nearly forgot. You whisper it again and again. Until it feels like armor. Until it feels like truth. The moon is a pale coin. Barely worth the sky it buys. But it's enough. Enough to see by. Enough to risk everything for. You move like smoke. Quiet. Shapeless. Searching for cracks in the night. The dormitory sighs behind you. Full of women dreaming dreams that aren't safe to speak aloud. Your boots are tied with threadbare laces. Your breath stays low in your chest. The matchsticks tap against your thigh in rhythm with your heartbeat. You don't look back. You've done enough. Looking back. The path is familiar now. Every stone, every bend in the brush, even the puddles feel like old friends, reflecting the silver glow of a sky too high to touch. No dog barks. No voice calls out. But you sense something. Not fear. Not quite. Something older. Something like fate unspooling in front of you. Thread by thread, you reach the hollow. The tree still leans like an old man thinking hard. You crouch. Wait. The earth is quiet. Then a sound. Not loud. Not sudden. Just a shift. A breath. A step. And then him. He looks thinner. Hollowed out by hiding. Dirt stains his collar. One sleeve is torn. But his eyes catch the moonlight and reflect something unbroken. You don't speak. You don't need to. He opens the satchel slung over his shoulder and pulls out a crust of bread, half a water flask, and a bundle wrapped in fabric. Inside, a new shirt, a small knife, and a map. Hand-drawn. You came, he says, as if he doubted it until this very moment. You nod. I had to. He doesn't smile. Not quite. But his shoulders drop. Relief looks strange on him. like armor taken off after too long. He gestures to the trail just beyond the ridge. It's about 2 days, maybe 3. If we're careful. There's a hut. No one checks it. Not anymore. You glance back. Even now, even here, the instinct to look back claws at you. But this time you fight it off. You walk, together, through bramble, creek, and shadow. He leads. You follow. Not because he's the man, but because he knows. Because he mapped this in darkness. Because this part of the story was never written for you, but you're writing it anyway. Step by step, breath by breath. You walk. That night, you don't light a fire. Too dangerous. You sit beneath a fallen tree, knees tucked under your chin, and he lies nearby, one hand resting on the knife, the other on the map. You whisper, "Do you believe in luck?" He doesn't answer for a long time. "Then I believe in people." You say, "That's riskier." He says, "Yes," and neither of you sleeps, but somehow it feels like rest. The second day is harder. Your feet blister. The trail narrows. A distant hawk circles, watching like a slow god. You share the last of the bread, drink the water in sips. When dusk falls, he limps. You tear fabric from your hem to wrap his ankle. He thanks you. You say, "We're not finished yet." He says, "We won't be. Not if they find us." At the crest of a hill you see it, a crooked outline, wood walls, a chimney with no smoke. The hut, real, waiting. He says, "Almost there." You nod, but inside you don't relax. Because almost means nothing out here. Almost is where the traps are set. And then shouting, far behind, boots, dogs, not close, but not far enough. You both freeze. Your mouth dries instantly. He grabs your hand, doesn't pull, just squeezes. Hard. Go. You run. The forest blurs. Branches whip at your arms. Mud clings to your boots. You don't look back. You don't fall. The hut appears again, closer now, and he reaches it first, throws open the door. You dive inside just as the first bark splits the air behind you. He slams the door. Barred, dark, silent. You crouch, both breathing like animals, both listening for boots, for shouts, for the sharp whistle of a command that will end all of this. But none come. Not yet. He lights one match. Just one. Just long enough to see the room. Dusty. Empty. Safe. He lets the flame burn to his fingertips before shaking it out. And in the quiet you finally ask, "What now?" He doesn't answer. Just reaches into the satchel. Pulls out a new piece of paper. Blank. He hands you the pencil. You stare at it. Then carefully write. Day 1. The first sunrise comes through broken shutters and dust-thick air. It paints the floorboards in streaks of gold and ash, turning the cracks in the walls into rivers of light. You sit up slowly, each muscle a quiet protest, each breath reminding you you're not in the camp anymore. There are no boots outside, no whistles, no barked orders, just birds, just the wind moving gently through trees that don't know what punishment means, and him, still asleep beside the hearth, one hand curled protectively around the satchel, as if even in dreams he's guarding the last piece of a future. You don't wake him. Instead, you explore. The hut is smaller than you remembered last night. One room, a shelf with old tins, a cupboard with a cracked mirror, a rain barrel outside, half full. In the back, a patch of weeds and wild mint, green living things you almost forgot how to name. You kneel by the patch, dig your fingers into the dirt. It's cold, damp, good. You smile, not because it's much, but because it's yours. Later, when he wakes, you share the last crumbs of bread. You boil water with dry leaves you don't recognize, but trust anyway. You clean the shelf, sweep the floor, patch the window with rags. He builds a new fire pit outside, away from view. He says, "We'll have to move again. Eventually." You nod. But not today. Today you live, and that is enough. The letters return, only now they aren't hidden. They live in a box by the bed, yours, scrawled on scrap paper, bits of bark, the backs of labels peeled from old cans. Not messages to each other, messages to the past. You write to the sugar girl, to the girl who sang in her sleep, to the girl who fought back, to yourself. I still remember the marigolds. The dog had one blue eye and one brown. We were not what they said we were. You are not your number. You were more. You are. The garden grows back, not as neat, not as hopeful, but real. Roots push through the charred soil. The beans climb the fence again. You name the fig tree, Eleanor, even though it hasn't fruited yet. He teases you for that. You don't mind. He hums when he works now, soft tunes, half remembered. Sometimes he sings. You don't tell him, but it makes your ribs ache in a good way, like the body remembering how to stretch after being caged. Seasons pass. You move once, then twice, each time further into the bush, further from maps, from systems, from the world that once measured your worth in crime and silence. You live near a creek now, clear water, tall grass, birds that call at dusk. No bars, no numbers, only names, your names, yours. And one day you write a final letter. You don't sign it, you don't send it, you burn it, not to hide, but to remember. Because fire here is not destruction. It is warmth, it is light, it is choice. The smoke curls into the sky like a signature, a goodbye, a promise, a beginning. You close your eyes and breathe, not in fear, but in fullness. And the wind at last carries nothing but your own name.